Hello tankers and tankettes, welcome to the fourth of these Patreon supporter videos, and we're starting off with this game from Irelandmann. I actually met Irelandmann at Tankfest, so I can put a face to the name now, and we're going to see him in action in the Tier 8 British turreted tank destroyer, the Charioteer. Now this thing, the hull looks not that different than the Challenger, and the mobility of it is pretty good, as you'll see. But the gun is a massive, massive upgrade. And it's got fairly good gun depression, it's got fairly good handling stats, so as you're going to see when you get unwary even 5100s that just decide to derp into the middle of the enemy team, well, the rate of fire means that he's going to get that kill easily. So that's already nearly 600 damage picked up, and he's barely out of the gate. We've actually only got 3 replays for you this time, so it's 2 almost full-length ones with a couple of cuts, and 1 in the middle that's a little bit, well, you'll see. But this was one of those games where the person playing it just keeps chipping away and chipping away and chipping away, and by the end of it, it's all added up to something far more than you would have thought just watching it. So it's not the most thrilling game, but it does show a good use of mobility. Although he does derp once or twice. In fact, at one point he derps rather badly. But anyway, a sneaky shot into the AndyCx, yes please. There's a T-34-3 coming along the flank. Otherwise, to the north, things look reasonably stable, although they're pushing out across there, the enemy team, so... We're not pushing out exactly, but that Tiger 2 is far enough forward that Irelandmann can continue to get shots if the guy continues to push his luck. Now, unfortunately, we've lost our Tier 9 heavy tank and our Tier 9 medium already, where the enemy team still has theirs, the VKB, and the AndyCx. But Irelandmann has now managed to damage both their Tier 9 tanks, so that's not too shabby. But you'll be able to see, like, the Challenger has this same gun depression, and it's got the same mobility. It's probably not exactly the same, you know, I'm generalizing here, but this thing is just like, I will continue to beat up on the Challenger. There is absolutely no reason why that doesn't have the 20-pounder gun. None at all. It's pure, inexplicable gameplay reasons. Like, it's all down to wargaming rather than historical reasons, because there is, like, that gun can fit in that machine. It's just, there's no reason for not having it. Anyway, enough about the Challenger. It's terrible. He's just looking to do a bit more damage. I mean, we're up to 1800 now, and he's not even really been trying. You know, I've ended plenty of battles on 1800 damage, so this is, you know, we can only go up from here. Gets spotted there, but is wise enough to pull back after he takes the shot. And there's enough targets around here that he's not immediately going to get singled out either, which is good for him because he doesn't have a whole lot of hit points, and he really doesn't have any armor to speak of. Things are looking fairly even so far, but the enemy team is pushing forward on that north flank. We had a couple of heavies that were hanging back, like our KV-4, for instance, was really inexplicably far back. We have an IS-3 here where Irelandmann is, and again, that's not really a good place to be in an IS-3. Like, I doubt he's been able to do much with his gun depression. He's just been poking up and just sitting there longing for some gun depression and wishing he could do something. So he was not in a good spot particularly. So although the numbers are not too bad, this team is a bit on the back foot. Meanwhile, Irelandmann, poking around this end, has spotted the Panther 2, gets a high enough roll to actually kill the guy, and pulls back. So up to 2600 damage. And, oh hello, there's the other enemy T-34-3. Now, this is going to be a battle of good gun handling versus a tank with terrible gun handling, and you'll see exactly how many shots this guy misses, because he can't afford to sit and aim. And that's why a lot of people don't like that particular gun. That's why that's not a particularly popular vehicle, because the gun handling is so derpy that you'll see exactly the look at that. It's just like I don't know if that was he's not using server reticle and he thought he was aimed or whatever, or if it was a panicked shot, but anyway, he's now an easy one-shot kill. all Irelandman has to do is plonk another one into his armour, which is not particularly great. Like the hull armour is it's not awful, and the turret armour is pretty decent, but against this gun, the 105mm, I mean, this is a very, very nice gun indeed. So he goes round, and oh, Irelandman, that might be costly. Now the guy is a little bit hesitant, but realises he's got a chance to push forward. Irelandman, meanwhile, has reloaded, and that guy was never going to get off another shot. So that was, I think, 3 or 4 shots it took to actually finally get one that damaged Irelandman, which is a good thing for Irelandman, because he really couldn't take that many. Meanwhile, things, well, yes, while that was all going on, while Irelandman was having that engagement, the North, well, it kind of boiled down to just a couple of tanks. Like, our team, despite being on the back foot, despite being on the defensive, it was a fighting retreat, we'll put it that way. So they managed to do enough damage to actually whittle it down to just a few enemy tanks. And Irelandman, meanwhile, you know, with that hit, he's just shy of 4,000 damage, which is respectable for a tier 8 tank destroyer, very respectable, and if he's lucky, he'll get another shot. And another kill. There we go, 4 kills. So we're down to an enemy Jagdtiger and 2 artillery. He's definitely got to be careful about artillery, either of which could probably one-shot him at this point if they have a penetrating hit. Luckily though, the Panther II is full health. I'm not quite sure why he's full health. It might be he was being very, very shy up till this point. But the fact that he is full health at this stage of the battle is pretty useful. He's got hit points to spend, basically. And the Jagdtiger's gun, it is hard hitting, but it's not enough to one-shot either of them, unless there's an ammo rack. And the chances of that are fairly low. But this is the point. This is the point where Irelandman kind of screws it up, because this is a perfect time to get a tracking shot. Instead, I don't know, he panics a little bit. The Jagdtiger is able to whack him for a whole bunch of health, and if it had been a much higher roll, Irelandman probably would have died. So actually, yes, he could have, having said they weren't really in danger of being a one-shot, that's in terms of average rolls, like it's entirely possible to roll high enough. So, just got to finish this guy off. The Panther II takes a hit in the process, and they're making a bit of a meal out of this, to be honest. Like, if they just tracked, and again, if Irelandman had tracked the guy when he had the side shot on the axle, but it's possible that it was just like the pressure was getting to him, and that can happen. That happens to everybody. Like, you get that moment where it's just like, and you get a little brain freeze. And the very best players, which does not include me, you know, that's not really a thing they have to deal with. But for the vast majority of us ordinary folk, yeah, me, ordinary, yeah, you are going to get those situations where it's just like the adrenaline's going and your hands are shaking it a bit, and it's at that point that you start to mess things up. But it wasn't a fatal mess-up. Both himself and the Panther II still alive, and now that it's just artillery, well, it should be a fairly easy clean-up. Although Irelandman's got to be careful. One splash would kill him quite nicely. So we don't know where that batch at 155-58 is. Irelandman actually spends some time searching. I think the guy, just before I made that cut, the guy took a snapshot at Irelandman, but it missed, fortunately. The French arty don't have massive splash as a rule, so he was fine. He got away with it. But he checked in the south, he's driven round in the middle, thinking maybe the guy is looping along the BC line. And I would have actually checked up in B9, B0 earlier, but for whatever reason Irelandman didn't think to. And it's only at this point, with, what is that, 12 seconds? There we go, 12 seconds on the clock, that the guy gets spotted. Now, Irelandman's much more likely to come better off out of a snapshot than the arty is. Like, arty has to sit and, well, you can let the shot fly early, but you're definitely going to die if it misses. But Irelandman, well, was able to get the shot off. It hit, and there we go. That was a comfortable ace mastery with a high caliber and a top gun to boot. So that was a very nice game. And yes, he did pretty badly screw up against that Jagdtiger. Like, that was a prime moment. In fact, there were several moments there where he should have taken tracking shots and didn't. And even if the guy had had a repair kit, he could have then retracked him. But regardless, that was a win with 1600 base XP, 5000 damage done, and 7 kills. So all round, that was a pretty nice match. And as you can see, there aren't that many people that came close. I mean, the IS-3 on his team actually did okay in the end, unless there were 2 IS-3s. No, there was only 1. The Tier 9s didn't acquit themselves particularly well. The Panther 2 did okay. You know, he stayed alive, but he didn't do much damage-wise. And just generally speaking, it didn't really seem like that was a game where he had to carry, but it kind of was, based on the sheer amount of damage that he had to do and was able to do. It just meant that nobody else was really doing enough. Next up is AndyCx, and this is indeed the Pz.II J. Now, this was his first battle after buying it, and it's not cheap to buy this thing, and it's probably a good thing it's not cheap to buy this thing, because it is ridiculous. Like, if you've never seen a game played in the Pz.II J, well, you're about to see what it can do when it's top tier. Now, the gun's terrible, but the armor, oh my, the armor. So, I don't really have a lot to say about this game. I think, actually, I'm just going to put some music on, and we can just all enjoy how utterly seal clubby and troll this ridiculous little machine is. So, as we can see, that was an ace mastery, which is not that difficult. There's not that many people playing these things. He got, I think that was a cool-headed for bouncing a lot of shells. A lot. A steel wall, unsurprisingly. Top gun, which all three replays actually have in common. And a high caliber. And again, all three replays have in common. So they're all aces. They've all got high calibers and they've all got top guns. 1300 damage, 8 kills. If this wasn't a tier 3, then this would be a Radley Walters game. But it is tier 3, and that was utterly, utterly shameless seal clubbing, and I think Andy is well aware of that. Damage blocked by armor, 2,994, and this thing has got, what, 180 hit points? 160? What is there to say? You know, minus 30k credits. He didn't even, like, a lot of people that have these things just roll around with full premium ammo because the gun's so bad. But the gun being so bad is the only thing that doesn't make this just utterly, utterly awful. I mean, can you imagine if this thing had a good gun and that armor at tier 3? That would just be like, no. Anyway, that was what it was. We'll get to see some actual skill in the next one. Sorry, Andy, but it's true. Finally, we have Manty111, and one of his medium tank replays was actually in the last video, and I think I mentioned that he'd sent another one at the same time. This is it. Now, he's got that. To my eyes, it's a weird way of driving around and controlling his tank. He usually has his viewpoint like this, just over the barrel. And it seems to, like, that seems to work for him. He pulls up some very, very good shots indeed, and you'll see what I mean later on. But to be honest, I find that a little bit annoying to watch. So I've actually done something a bit different in this one. I'm switching back and forth between the free cam viewpoint and his own viewpoint. So it's his own viewpoint for all the important bits, but in between it's kind of the free cam mode. And hopefully it's not too jarring. I've tried to make it quite of a smooth transition where I can. So the Object 140, I don't really know much about it other than it's a tier 10 Russian medium. It's probably got a very good turret, and it's probably got terrible gun depression, decent gun, okay frontal armor. So yeah, oh, and a log, obviously, that's the most important thing. I mean, we all know the defining characteristic of a Russian medium tank, and the reason why they're so OP is because they've got logs. So this battle was, well, as you can see, Abby, tier 10, pretty good matchmaking, not many tier 10s per side. In fact, about half of each team was tier 8, just under, rest tier 9s and 10s. And as you can see, there's a decent spread. We've got VKB on the 8-9 line, which ought to prove a sufficient roadblock for anything going that way, although there is artillery. Each team has a tier 10 arty, so that may be a factor. And we've got a very good showing on the 1-2-3 line, which is what you want. We've also got a T-34 and a Jagdtiger just camping base, and the Jagdtiger okay, but the T-34, not sure what good he's going to do back there. Anyway, Manty deciding that this RU-251 that went up here really doesn't have any support, has decided to just go for him, take him out, and does so fairly easily. The 121 really doesn't make any move to stop him, so that's fine. We've got the middle of the map. It can be very useful later in the match. Early in the match, well, Abby's a funny one. Sometimes you'll get teams that, like, usually it's the 1-2-3 line that's fairly important. The 8-9 line kind of depends on how many artillery the enemy team has and possibly tank destroyers. But sometimes it's that middle Abbey area, you know, the part that it's named after, that can be the important bit, because if you've got control of this, you're actually able to some extent support both flanks, although it's easier to support the 1-2-3 line from here and do what Manty is doing and get those side shots against advancing tanks. So it looks like the enemy team have done exactly the same thing. They've got a whole bunch of vehicles there and they're actually pushing quite aggressively, and it looks like our team's not doing that well. We've already lost 4 tanks. So Manty at this point decides that he can just sit here and be safe and it'll be fine, but it's probably better to actually move up and do something. Now, I thought that was a bit ridiculous. Like, he just dropped. He didn't even drop. He went down that tiny little slope and lost 100 hit points. I don't know. Anyway, this 121 has got as bad gun depression as Manty does, in fact, probably worse. So This is actually a fairly fine position for Manty to be in, and he's got assistance from the friendly T-71, who's just peppering this guy's backside with little APCR shells. So easy. The only damage he took there was from that fall, which made absolutely no sense, but whatever. The 1-2-3 line still looking a bit dicey. They're not overrun just yet. On numbers, it's only 3-4, so nothing to panic about. The Jagdtiger has actually made a move before that T-34 has, and we're just going to fast forward a little bit here because a French scout's about to appear. Not our own 1390, but the AMX 1357, and Manty pauses to take a shot, but not nearly enough lead on it, unfortunately, so that guy gets away. But he decides there are more pressing matters, and I think he's right. Like, the E100 is pressing up T69, there's a T49 there, there's something else as well. So, yeah, he really has got to help out these guys. What is that? Conqueror, Type 61. Type 61 just died, which is useful. So the Jagdtiger coming here has been particularly useful. He's bought that E100 some time. If the T-34 had come here as well, he might have done a bit better on the results screen. Anyway, this is one of the ridiculous shots I was talking about. Like, I could never make a shot like this work, but Manty does it twice. And maybe that's why I will never be as good at medium tanks as Manty probably is. So. Anyway, so he's got a choice between that T-69 and he puts a shot in there. And he could have gone for the Conqueror, but he decided, I don't know. He decided because the Conqueror had fallen back, whatever. So he took a shot from the Conqueror, which was APCR, and you might be thinking, why would you need to shoot APCR on a Conqueror? Yeah, but look at the damage done. That guy had the 20-pounder gun. So, fair enough, in a tier 10 battle, firing APCR with a stock gun. That's basically how I'm getting through my 110 grind on the Chinese line, because you've got that absolutely horrible 122mm with horrible gun handling and horrible penetration, at least when you're facing tier 10s. So, yeah, it's not so good. Now, that E100 was low enough health that, yeah, that T49 was a foregone conclusion. But Manty, well, he was thinking about legging it back round and instead went for the T49, because if he hadn't, the Jagdtiger quite possibly would have died as well, or at the very least the T49 would have made a getaway and made things a little bit more awkward later on. So it's basically come down to, and this is where that mode of controlling your tank doesn't work so well. He does catch things occasionally. There's a bit later on where he catches the corner of a house as well, because he's doing that over turret viewpoint. But the VKBs come up against the mouse. The VKB unfortunately died, and the T-34, at least at that point, moved up to engage. But Manty has gone instead to aid the cries for help of this 1390, who encountered an IS-3. There's also artillery has died at this point, so that's fine. So there's not that to take care of. But he gets pretty lucky. The IS-3 actually turns around and does snapshot, but it's into the gun, so that's fine. Manty had to use his repair kit already, but we're down to just that mouse. For some reason, our Object 261, the friendly one, decides to... I don't know. He's bitching about something, and I honestly cannot figure out what he could possibly be mad about. But I don't know. Just... you stay mad there, Mr. Artillery player. Anyway, it comes down to the mouse. The mouse was clearly expecting somebody to come up from behind. He was actually reversing, but with his turret pointed backwards, so he knew Manty was going to come up behind him, or somebody, you know, 1390 maybe. But anyway, Manty's able to get in with a kill, and easy. 7 kills, and a whole bunch of damage. So, yeah, another ace tanker, another high caliber, another top gun, just as Irelandmann had, and easily top of the team, as you can see. Not quite as much XP as Irelandmann, but then he was in a tier 10. That 1390 actually did pretty well. The E100 did pretty well. The Jagdtiger in 4th place. And some of the team not so much. I don't know. That really mad Object 261 actually did a decent amount of damage, but he was way down towards the bottom of the team. Well, if you want really, really good XP, then don't play artillery, basically. Like, you're going to be doing most of your damage at distances that mean that you're never going to get that much XP. So, there we are. I did miss last week's one because, of course, of Tankfest. I say last week's one, the last fortnight's one. There isn't really a neat way of saying that, but anyway. But I feel like we're back onto the regular schedule now. I've got a couple of replays that might do for the next one, and we'll see what the Patreon supporters can, the games that they play in the next 2 weeks. Somebody might have an absolutely blistering game. I don't know. We'll see. There's a T14 from Andy that we might get to see. You don't see a lot of T14 replays. It's not a particularly good tank, but that one might be decent. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed these ones, you can do the usual things. You can hit the like button. You can check out my Patreon page, the link for which you'll find somewhere below. You can leave any comments. You can subscribe to my channel. And as always, stay tuned for more.